to Innovate Passing a Friday morning coffee event. This is my usual thing that I do. I mean, not necessarily fitness presentations, but I work as a personal trainer and nutrition coach. I'm the founder of Holistic Fitness. I've been working in this field for about 13 years now, and I put this presentation together for you guys because productivity is a really important part of everyday lives, especially as entrepreneurs, because we really don't have bosses per se that are encouraging us to complete our tasks. So being productive and having energy is a really important part of motivation to doing that work. And over the years, I've been doing a lot of research and doing a lot of practice with my clients and also myself to come up with a synergistic solution that I call holistic health hacking. And that is like the foundation of Edge Holistic Fitness. So I'm going to be talking about these concepts throughout this presentation. But just keep in mind, this isn't just about health and fitness and looking good naked, which is all legitimate. I mean, I'm sure we all have body composition goals, and that's all good. I know I do. But keep in mind that a lot of this, the health fitness component also relates to your work productivity component. Okay, so the holistic system I'm talking about combines two well-known elements of health and fitness, which is exercise and nutrition. But lesser known is stress management and optimal sleep. And what I've done is, like I said, I put together a lot of research and come up with easy to do plug-and-play strategies that can help create a synergistic relationship between all these components to ultimately help people achieve their fitness goals in the least amount of time possible, keeping in mind that efficiency drives sustainability. So we're going to get into the exercise component now. And here's an interesting thing. There's a lot of research that's now being shown that physical activity, it's just not enough. Unless, of course, you have like a very physically demanding job. And by physically demanding, by physically demanding, I mean like you work as a construction worker, you work as a chef, you're on your feet not 24/7, but maybe 5 or 6 hours out of your work day. And even still, it may not be enough depending on how well the other components of your life are going. Is your nutrition good? Is your stress good? Are you sleeping well? Generally speaking, high-intensity training is superior to physical activity in that it stimulates physiological thresholds that create some sort of metabolic response. And the various metabolic responses that I'm really concerned about, and I'm advocating that you guys should be concerned about, is protein synthesis, that's the technical term for muscle growth, lipolysis and beta oxidation, those are technical terms for fat loss, and EPOC, which is excess post-exercise oxygen consumption. This is commonly known as the metabolic afterburn. So if you do a high-intensity workout, you're not just burning energy in the workout, you're also getting dividends after the workout that serve you very well for 24 or up to 48 hours, depending on the variables. Physical activity, on the other hand, and you can see here this guy's sprinting, that's like the penultimate high-intensity exercise, and these people are leisurely walking, which is good. I'm not saying don't be physically active. I'm just saying it should be secondary to high-intensity exercise if you have lofty goals. Physical activity does not have physiological thresholds. And by physiological threshold, I mean like raising your heart rate, getting that muscle burn, lactic acid accumulation when you're doing resistance training, an elevation in your respiration rate, all of these things. And as a result of the lack of physiological threshold, there's no metabolic response. You're only really expending energy while you do that thing. So, training intensity in EPOC. This is something that's gaining a lot of notoriety. I mean, the research has been showing this equivalently for probably about a couple of decades now. But the really interesting thing that they're showing is that high intensity, short duration, I'm talking like 30 minutes, is more impactful than low/moderate intensity, long duration training. So doing a high intensity workout condensed into a 30 or maybe 45-minute workout, could be even less depending on how much time you have, can have a greater effect within the workout and after the workout than an exercise that you can do leisurely for 60 or 75 minutes. And you can see here, according to this graph, moderate intensity has a shorter EPOC because there's not as much of what's called oxygen debt. If you do high intensity training, which is what HIIT stands for, your body is in debt to the work that you've just done. And you can experience that as an elevated heart rate and elevated respiration rate for maybe 10 to 60 minutes after your workout. And then even as your heart rate and respiration rate goes down, the metabolic aftermath is still working 24 or 48 hours after the fact. And this is not just my idea and advocacy. There's a lot of organizations out there that are really pushing for this as well. Has anyone heard of Orange Theory Fitness? Yeah, have you guys been inside yet? No? So what they're doing is they're doing high intensity interval training with resistance training, cardio training, and everyone's plugged into a heart rate monitor, and their heart rates are actually depicted on a TV, and the trainers can walk around and say, hey, you're nowhere near your maximum, push harder, keep pushing harder. And they're really focusing on this high intensity training modality. CrossFit works off of these systems as well. There's a lot of really good training systems out there that really take advantage of this philosophy. Okay, and I'm going to demonstrate for you guys. I did this for you, and it was really tough, but I enjoy it. What I mean by high intensity. So there's a video I put together of me doing an exercise to complete oblivion. I don't know if the volume's going to work really well. I was only able to do one take, and there's a lot of background noise. We'll see how it goes.
Just tell us what you're saying.
Yeah. So I'm talking about high intensity and how it's not really well defined. So I'm talking about high intensity being any exercise pushed to volitional failure. And I'm going to demonstrate that volitional failure on one of my favorite exercises, which is called the split jump. So it's for the hamstrings, it's for the glutes, it's a great exercise, blah, blah, blah.
That guy's in way better shape.
What's that?
That guy's in way better
I know. That was me from yesterday. I gained weight overnight. Yeah. So just so you know, my computer sounded totally different. Like I could actually hear myself. So I apologize for the sound, but this is me just doing the exercise now. And I'm explaining the technique, that I'm keeping the weight on the front leg, that my knee's over the toe line. It's pretty much a quick lunge. It's a plyometric exercise.
It's a what exercise?
Plyometric. Explosive training, like sprinting, jumping, things
of
like that.
volitional.
What's that?
Volitional.
Volitional, meaning like I can't do any more despite my best intentions.
Voluntary.
Yeah. So I'm going to speed up in a moment here. Not going that fast.
About time you started working out.
Yeah, right? Quit screwing around. So I'm getting really tired now talking about how I want to stop. I'm really exhausted. My legs are getting really heavy. The range of motion is starting to suffer. My speed of motion is starting to suffer. And you can see me really slowing down here. So it looks like I'm moving through mud now. But keep pushing. Keep pushing. Keep pushing. There you go. I almost fell. I actually had to catch myself. And I'm talking about how my heart rate is through the roof. My respiration rate is really hard. It's hard for me to breathe. My legs are shaky. But I love it. And I'm talking about the benefit is that I'm burning energy now and in the post-exercise state for hours afterwards. That only took me about 75 seconds, by the way. As uncomfortable as it was, I would rather do that than steady state exercise for 10 or 20 minutes. And that's the idea. Okay. So in addition to high intensity training, there's other exercise modalities that are really important, such as corrective exercise training. That's important for people that, well, anyone. It can be specific to a sport, it can be specific to an occupation. How many people here, you're probably all entrepreneurs because like, no one's at work right now, right? So that's cool. Or this is work. But how many people, by show of hands, sit at a desk for more than 2 hours a day? Don't lie to me, everyone, right? Exactly. Okay, so sitting at a desk, you get this upper cross syndrome effect, which is that our head is forward, our shoulders are forward, our chest gets tighter, our back musculature gets looser and weaker, and as a result we start walking around like this. And it causes problems in addition to just looking a little off. It can cause other muscle and joint problems down the line. So a really cool exercise is this thing called the overhead squat. It undoes all of that. Who wants to demonstrate this for me? It says volunteers. What's your name?
Paula.
Paula. Come over here, Paula. I think we have space right over here. And I'm going to have Paula do this exercise. And it's a little tricky. Okay. So, thank you for volunteering, Paula. Put your hands up here on the wall.
High or high?
As high as you can. Step back just a little bit. Yeah, actually behind this line is perfect. Feet about hip width apart, so a little wider. And then what I want you to do is keeping your hands on the wall, squat down, bend your knees, keep your hips back just a little bit more, squat down, lower, 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 lower. Nope. Well, yeah, they drop down a little bit. You want to keep reaching up. So she's going to be moving down where her arms are reaching up. Go ahead, squat. Squat lower. Lower.
I see.
Hips down. More. So, like you're trying to sound the floor. Okay, so from here, she's just going to hold this position. Her hips are back. She's leaning forward. She's reaching up. There should be a contraction sensation all the way from the neck down to the pelvis. And it's training all of the posterior chain of her back musculature. You can relax now. This is great. It's pretty easy. I mean, it's technically tough.
Isn't it?
Thank you. You're around. It's technically tough, and if you guys want, you can see here that you're trying to get to that thigh parallel. I'm getting a forward lean from the waist. I'm raising my arms as high as I possibly can, and it really helps counteract all of the negative effects from sitting at a desk. And it can be done. This is a very effective exercise. It can help re-energize you if you're getting a little tired. It can take 20 to 30 seconds. If you can do it longer than 30 seconds, chances are you're doing it wrong. So it's tough. It's meant to be tough. Okay, now moving on to nutrition. This is the hardest part. I tell all my clients this. The hardest part of fitness is nutrition, and that's because we may exercise one time a day, maybe 6 or 7 days a week if you're a rock star. Maybe like 3 or 4 times a week if you're doing pretty good. But you're eating usually about 3 times, maybe 4 times a day. There's a lot more room for error. So we're eating a lot more frequently than we're exercising. And there's this inconvenient truth, which is that there's this oversimplified model of calories in versus calories out. But I'm sorry to say that losing body fat is a lot more complicated than that. It's deeply rooted in physiology. And believe me, this is actually a really simple pictogram here. There's a lot more going on here. There's enzymes, there's metabolic pathways. And the science is actually, for me, really exciting and very complicated. But oftentimes we're just told, like, oh, if you want to lose body fat, just eat less and move more. Like 6 units of calories and 9 units of exercise means net negative 3 units of body fat. And that just doesn't happen. It's not that simple. And I'll explain why. Oh, and another really important thing. Human metabolism is very diverse. Everyone has a different metabolic profile. Everyone has different energy needs. So using the calories in versus calories out conventional diet paradigm, this is usually what happens. Someone will, follow whatever system that they want. I'm using the USDA recommendations, which is a one-size-fits-all methodology that says everyone should be getting about 50 to 60% of their dietary energy from carbohydrates. And of that, 5 to 8 servings of bread or grains, which I think is a lot. Some people will be able to get away with that. Most people probably not so much. But they'll take that idea and they'll fit it into caloric restriction. So let's just say that your metabolism is 2,000. Calorie restriction would say eat 1,500 to create a 500 calorie deficit. So someone that has a metabolism of 2,000 goes on a 1,500 calorie diet, they experience some weight loss. This will happen. However, if you're not really matching it to your metabolic needs and you're just winging it, you may lose body fat, but you're probably going to lose some water and some muscle as well. The more muscle you lose, the worse it is for you. That is your metabolic machinery. In terms of fitness and fatness, in the sense we want to lose body fat, we want to be more like a sports car versus a Prius. We don't want to be efficient, we want to be gas guzzlers. And muscle is our metabolic machinery. It's the most expensive things on our bodies. So the more muscle you have, the higher your metabolic rate will be. So if you lose muscle, you decrease your metabolism. And if you continue to eat 1,500 calories, your resting metabolic rate will get closer and closer to that 1,500 calorie set point as you lose more and more muscle. And then you'll experience difficulty in continuing to lose weight even though you're on the same program. You'll hit a plateau and you'll probably cease the diet. And you'll go back to eating whatever you want, but because you have less muscle, your metabolism's lower, and you'll not only regain the weight that you lost, but you may gain some extra. And this cycle goes on and on and on. One thing I didn't include here is that there's hormones, critical hormones that can be damaged by this as well, which could be leptin. We can talk about that later. By the way, there will be a Q&A section afterwards, so if you ever have any questions, save them for the end, and I will be sure to address them. So I'm here to propose practical nutrition hacks. Now, there are very few absolutes regarding what healthy nutrition is and isn't. It's very much relative to the individual and their unique biochemistry. But here are some things that across the board should accommodate, I'd say, the vast majority of people. Maximizing organic food and minimizing processed food. So there are a lot of benefits of organic food. A higher bioavailability, that means your body can actually absorb and utilize the nutrients that you're consuming. Lower toxicity. If an animal was raised in an organic free-range environment, if a plant was raised in an organic environment, there's minimal exposure to toxic chemicals and this thing called persistence organic pollutants. If there's anything that you look up today that you want to scare the heck out of yourself with, look up persistence organic pollutants in agriculture. It's sad that we did this to ourselves. But keep in mind, there's some plant life out there that will still have this thing called phytotoxins. Really quickly, animals can attack or run away when threatened. Plants can't. They defend themselves chemically. They want to live. They're alive. So that's your vegetarian friends. Plants want to live, and they defend themselves through chemical methods. That's called phytotoxins. Some plants are really good at this. Some aren't so good at this. The legume kingdom, that's proper, legumes themselves tend to have a high phytotoxin content, and that can cause gas, bloating, irregularities with your bowel movements and all that good stuff. That's a sign that your body's actually not doing well with it, but we'll just drink coffee and forget about it anyway. So animals that are raised in a humane fashion, that's cool. I love that. I mean, I like eating their meat. I don't want them to suffer. There's minimal exposure to growth hormones and minimal antibiotics. So you're getting a lot less of that burden. The things that animals eat, when we eat their meat, we're indirectly consuming it. So if an animal was raised in the vicinity of persistent organic pollutants and it gets into their meat and we eat their meat, guess what? We're now ingesting indirectly persistent organic pollutants. Organic whole foods naturally aid in detoxification because they reduce toxic load. So this is pretty much the polar opposite. Processed foods are laden with toxic chemicals that disrupt immune and endocrine systems. That's what persistent organic pollutants can do. It really messes with your thyroid in particular. And that's what is meant by endocrine disruptors. Our endocrine system is all of our organ systems and its ability to regulate hormones, and that has an effect on our energy, our sleep, our stress response, our ability to gain and lose weight. So excess toxins, they overload the liver, which is a site for detoxification, and when there's too much burden on the liver, excess toxins can be stored in adipose tissue. So you can go to McDonald's and have a low-calorie meal, kind of. I mean, 500 calories from a double cheeseburger, I'm not worried about that. It's however many grams of toxic slop that I just put in my body, that's what I'm worried about. Because you can go to, and In-N-Out's going to love this, you can go to In-N-Out and eat the same hamburger and get the same calories, the same protein, same fat, same everything. But because you're having a lot less toxic burden, you're probably not going to gain as much weight eating those foods. Again, disrupt thyroid function and cause weight loss resistance. That's when your thyroid secretion goes down, your thyroid hormones go down, and despite the fact you're on a low-calorie diet or you're exercising, your body can still have this thing called weight loss resistance, where it just does not want to burn fat. It will burn protein and it will burn carbohydrates in the form of muscle and liver glycogen, but it won't tap into your adipose tissue. And the reason being for that, by the way, is because if your adipose tissue is holding on to toxic food, toxic substances, unless your body is ready to detox, it's not going to put that in the system. It's just adding more fuel to the fire. So all this can cause serious health problems, including cancer. So, anyone ever heard of intermittent fasting? Oh, nice. Who wants that? You're not doing so well on that?
I don't like it.
You don't like it?
Messes up my sleep.
Okay, we should talk about that afterwards. Who has a definition, or if you want to share what you think intermittent fasting means? You in the back.
Maybe for a period of 2 hour, 4 hour, or 6 hour span, and then after that, the rest of the day.
Yeah, that's the idea. It's some amount of controlled fasting period where you're intentionally not eating. All of us, unless you're like Tyler Durden and you're living like two different lives, all of us are experiencing some sort of fast over the period of time when we're sleeping. From when we go to bed and when we wake up, that's a fasted state. That's actually why breakfast is called breakfast. It's breaking the fast. So there's this concept that we're trying to actually increase the fasting state. This can be done in several different methods. I recommend using a 16-8 method, which basically means instead of eating from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., which a lot of people do, start eating at 12 p.m. to 8 p.m., giving yourself about an extra 4 hours in the fasted state. You're kind of skipping breakfast, but you're not skipping the calories. You're just pushing them into an 8-hour eating window instead of a 12-hour eating window. The benefits of this is increased growth hormone secretion, and that helps with building muscle and also burning fat, and can also aid in detoxification because it's an extra 4 hours that your body doesn't have to deal with junk. Quick question, what's up?
So the saying that your breakfast is your most important meal, that's contrary to this, but that's just
It's a misconception. I say this, the caveat to this is that it should work for a lot of people. It won't work for everybody. People will need to experiment with these variables and find out what works best for them. I challenge the convention that breakfast is absolutely the most important meal of the day. It can be the most important meal of the day if you prove that it's right for you. But having that blanket statement across the board and now everyone thinks that they have to get it in is not necessarily true. It's a good question though. So my recommendation is try it and see if it works. Glycemic load is this really interesting thing because everyone's concerned about carbohydrates and its effect on insulin. Not all carbs are equal. Glycemic load is basically the potency of carbohydrates multiplied the quantity of carbohydrates. So a great example would be white rice has a higher glycemic load than brown rice. White bread has a higher glycemic load than whole wheat bread. And there's certain fruits that have a higher glycemic load per serving than other fruits, like pineapple, cherries, mangoes, grapes. These are higher glycemic carbohydrates versus apples, nectarines, grapefruits, oranges, things like that. So there's a list here. And by the way, no one needs to memorize this. If you guys want access to this PowerPoint, I can totally give it to you. There's other resources here that you're definitely going to want to look at with more time at your own leisure. So you want to focus on the lower glycemic fruits, low glycemic veggies. Most of them are low glycemic except potatoes and corn, and derivatives like potatoes like yams. Legumes are all low glycemic, but we talked about it has high phytotoxin content. You'll have to find out, like if it's giving you gas, maybe just once or twice a week, but not every day. Grains, on the grain side, oats and quinoa are lower than rice, pasta, and bread. And they're also devoid of gluten, which is good. So the benefit is increased insulin sensitivity, and because you're more insulin sensitive, you can lose more body fat. If you're worried about diabetes, it can help ameliorate that for you. Fuel partitioning is a really interesting thing. It's kind of new in the research field. Bodybuilders have been doing this for years, and now scientists are kind of catching on to what the benefit is. And it's basically timing questionable meals to the peri-workout state. What I mean by questionable is it's really high glycemic. It's like a big old bowl of pasta. And you shouldn't be having it, but you're going to have it anyway. You might as well have it either before, but preferably after your workout to minimize the negative effects. It's because after you've worked out, your body has depleted its glycogen stores. There's a physiological imperative to replenish your muscle and liver glycogen stores. So when you eat a high carbohydrate meal, it's more likely to go into your muscle cells and your liver cells, and less likely to go into your adipose tissue, your body fat. So that works for high glycemic foods. It also works great for cheat meals. I love me some donuts. I just pig out on donuts at least once a week for my cheat meal, and I usually time it after my workout. So the benefit of this is it negates the negative impact of high glycemic in cheat foods. Most people don't know this, but they're probably low protein deficient. If you were to look at a food label and it says this has 20 grams of protein in it, it's going to tell you that that's like 40% of your protein intake. If you do the math, basically the USD is telling you guys that you guys should be aiming for about 50 to 60 grams of protein a day. I find that that's actually really low. I think protein needs to be set according to your, well, all fats, carbohydrates, and proteins. They all need to be customized to your fitness goals and your specific metabolic type. But generally speaking, I think most people need a minimum of about 80 grams of protein a day. So protein shakes can be a very cost-effective, convenient, and fast way of increasing your protein intake. There's a lot of great supplements out there. Don't go out and get muscle milk necessarily. They put a bunch of chemicals in it. There's some other healthier alternatives, sorry, muscle milk. Some healthier alternatives out there that have the least amount of ingredients. And the benefit is, you'll probably be able to increase your muscle tone, which is good for improving your metabolism, and also it helps increase satiety. So if you add a little bit more protein into each meal, you're more likely to not snack necessarily afterwards. And getting to snacks, portioning is so important. If you have a big tub of nuts and you just keep, handful after handful, about two handfuls of nuts is almost 200 calories. So if you have 4 or 6 handfuls, you can do the math. It gets up pretty high pretty quick. They're healthy. I'm not trying to scare you about fat. Dietary fat in the form of nuts is usually a really good place to get your dietary fat from. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just about portion control. You don't want to go nuts. So, no pun intended. Seriously, no pun intended on that one. But have you ever been to those restaurants, fast food places, where you get those little containers that you can fill up with ketchup and it has the plastic lid? That is 1/4 cup. Next time you're at Lucky Boy or whatever in Pasadena, go just grab a bunch of those. And you can actually use that for what fits in one serving will fit one serving of, that'll fit one serving of nuts, one serving of dried fruit. And I'm not saying have a bunch of dried fruit, but if you want to have some and you want to know what one serving is, it's that thing filled with the lid on top. But my preference for healthy options are here. A piece of fruit, a cup of veggies, a 1/4 cup of nuts, low glycemic health bars. There's some out there like Kind does a pretty good job. 1 to 2 hard-boiled eggs, or this requires a little bit more prep time. Half a cup of plain yogurt, Greek preferred because it has a higher protein content, and also a half cup of berries. And this is the easiest thing, water, but often the hardest to do for whatever reason. But it is so important. It's recommended that we get about 80 to 120 ounces per day. It's really important for detoxification because if our bodies are detoxifying, we have to flush it out some way. Either it goes through urine or through poopies, and either way, water helps. Cellular hydration is a really important thing. Water needs to get into our cells to maintain normal cell function, and that has a small boost to the metabolism. By the way, anytime I say boost to metabolism, I'm talking somewhere between 1 and 5%. It's not like 100% increase as a result of getting 100 grams of protein in per day. I'm not advocating that. It can increase satiety. So if you're having trouble with intermittent fasting, like you're getting to hour 12, 13, 14, you're really starting to get hungry, drink some water to help curb your appetite. And it may help slightly improve energy/alertness. Don't worry about this. This is yours. You can have this, and then you can read it at your own leisure. I just want to provide it for you. This is a macronutrient goals table. So on the left side, you see here are your body composition goals. So you want to lose the most amount of fat, or you want to have the least amount of muscle growth, or you want a little bit of both, or you want mostly muscle growth and you don't care if you gain a pound or 2, or don't lose any body fat whatsoever. Stage 1 is a low carb diet, stage 2 is a moderate carbohydrate diet, stage 3 is a high carbohydrate diet. Stage 1 is also high fat, stage 3 is also low fat. So as your carb intake goes up, your fat intake goes down. Your protein intake is pretty much consistent throughout. If you guys need help explaining this, or if you don't want me to walk you through it, you can, when I email it to you, we can have a dialogue. That's free. This is also a table that you're going to want to look at your own. These are supplements that work. I've researched them, I've personally experimented with them, and then these are all their benefits. So we have categories like muscle growth, fat loss, reduced stress, improved sleep, improved mental energy. Mental health is something else. Sorry. Can't help you with that, guys. Anti-inflammation, improved gut health, which is a really important one. Immune system, insulin sensitivity, and improved cholesterol. And we got two more concepts to talk about. Bear with me, guys. I'll go through this as quickly as I can. Stress is important because of its effect on cortisol and cortisol's effect on our hormones in general. Stress is inevitable. How we cope with it is what matters most. I'm not suggesting that you quit your job and become a monk and just disappear off the planet, or even go off the grid. But the reality is our lives have changed substantially in the last, I'd say, 50 years versus the past tens of thousands of years, because technology and innovation can keep us stressed in ways. So there's this thing called the adaptive stress response, which is tens of thousands of years ago when we were being chased by some animal, or we were chasing an animal that we wanted to kill, we would get the surge of energy. This would be the fight or flight response. Cortisol would be secreted in addition to adrenaline. It would help serve an increase in energy output. Our muscles would get more blood flow and more energy to actually run away or chase and kill. And that was survival. If we didn't do that, we wouldn't get dinner, or we would be somebody's dinner. And that's not good either way you look at it. So the increase in energy production is coupled with an increase in physical activity. We did something with that. So we would either hunt or run away, but once we did, we were done. We didn't be like, man, that lion was chasing me, and like, I'm really mad about that. It's like, we didn't play those psychological games. We didn't care. We survived. Let's move on and go find something to kill and eat. So as the activity ceased, the stressor itself ceased. Now, ghrelin is an interesting hormone because it helps increase appetite. So it would be secreted to help you, like, oh, okay, you just burned a bunch of energy, you were physically active, let's go eat something to replenish your muscle glycogen stores. So you would want to eat something, you would restore your energy reserves, and then you get to this thing called homeostasis. And that is the full loop, shut and done. Your body is back to balance. But that was tens of thousands of years ago. Now it's a little different. So our stress is not a predator that we're running from or a prey that we're chasing down. It is now work, relationships, social media, commuting. All of these things are a constant stressor in our lives. So our bodies have the same response. It's evolutionarily rooted into our physiology. So we have the same response. We secrete cortisol and adrenaline. We have an increase in energy production, but what's missing? No physical activity. Especially if you're sitting in your car stressed out about traffic, or sitting at your office stressed out about deadlines. You're mentally active, but you're not physically active. The stress also doesn't stop, typically, but your body's still secreting ghrelin, so you have an increase in appetite. You eat, but your energy reserves are full. No homeostasis, because the stress never stops. And if this cycle keeps going and going and going, eventually it leads to a hormone imbalance and fat accumulation. And that's because cortisol is throwing off your insulin sensitivity and your leptin sensitivity. And if you're insulin resistant, you're pre-diabetic, you're having a hard time burning body fat. And if you're leptin resistant, your body is not tapping into its own energy reserves. That's a lose-lose situation. So now I just stressed you out about stress, sorry. Let's discover healthy stress coping strategies. And it's anything really that induces a sense of stillness and calm. So the thing that's stressing you out, if you can escape it in some way where it's no longer on your mind, at least not consciously, that's a good thing. Deep breathing is my favorite. You can do this anytime that you're not talking. I very rarely deep breathe because I'm always talking. But you can do it while you're driving your car. It's actually really great. Exercise, of course, is a great stress reliever. Meditation, reading a book, talking with friends, watching a comedy, anything that induces that stillness is good. And lastly, sleep. You want to sleep like a baby, quality-wise, not quantity-wise. I don't think you guys can afford like 12 hours of sleep a day. But studies show that chronic sleep deprivation causes increased cortisol secretion throughout the day. We talked about the negative effect of that, which is insulin and leptin sensitivity issues. It can lead to weight gain. Also, there are sleep studies that amongst all other variables that are controlled, just increasing sleep, everything else remains the same, fat loss. Sleep is essential for enabling regeneration of the body. It is the point where we are the most unplugged from the world. Our bodies are in the most healing state at that point, and we really want to optimize that as much as we possibly can. It will prevent chronic injuries from forming, and also heal chronic injuries that have already taken place. And if you're having trouble sleeping, there are supplements that are on that list, that table that I showed you, that are safe and effective. And if you have questions about that, please let me know. But that pretty much wraps it up, guys. I'll take the questions now. Yes?
I actually have that's like a question about a comment about sleep. I've never had a problem sleeping. Recently, I treated myself to new pillows. Holy crap. People don't realize if you had a pillow for a really long time, it's probably dead and not helping you at all.
Yep. Comfort, sleep comes down to probably 3 different things: comfort, stress, and physical ailments. It's not uncommon that people can actually experience insomnia as a result of something not going quite right in your body. And if you can't sleep despite the fact that you're quite calm and you're quite comfortable, it may be indicating that there's something that's going on that needs to be treated. It could be a gut health issue, it could be a chronic inflammation issue. So in that case, taking sleep aids is kind of just like masking the problem, and you might need a little bit more of a holistic investigation of what's really going on. But yes, a good pillow and a nice mattress to go with it is bliss. Yeah?
On the sleep and the fasting and the sleep combination, I was kind of confused in, I thought I always heard that you don't want to work out on an empty stomach if you haven't eaten anything. Is that just false?
It's not false per se. Again, there are very few absolutes. I will say this: if your goal is to burn the most amount of body fat and you're already well acclimated to exercise, exercise in the fasted state. Know this: if you've never exercised intensely before and you're now wanting to do everything all at once, which is high intensity and intermittent fasting, and you're getting your morning workout on an empty stomach, you will choke. I guarantee it. You will throw up. It will be like projectile vomit. It'll be awesome to watch, but not to experience. No, but in all sincerity, you can ramp up to that. And I can exercise in the fasted state with no problem, but it does require some time and some training for your body to get used to that. I typically recommend for my clients, if they're exercising in the morning and they're not used to high intensity training, because I kick their butts really hard, that you actually increase your carbohydrate intake before the workout. And eventually you can wean off of that. And you can have a normal meal before your workout. And then eventually you can transition into no meal before your workout. Yeah. Does that answer your question? Yeah.
So having protein after a workout, does that, I've always heard you should have protein right away after your workout to rebuild the muscle.
Yeah.
Is that what's the time frame on that where it's effective?
That's a good question. I would say between 30 minutes and 2 hours. Everyone's going to be a little bit different. My recommendation is, as soon as you can eat, eat. If you have moderate fat loss goal or maximal muscle growth goal, if you want maximum fat loss, try to stave off your post-exercise meal for maybe an hour or 2. Keep in mind that may also decrease your muscle mass accumulation as well. So if you're trying to build some muscle, immediately. If you're trying to just burn as much fat as possible, you can wait a while.
What if you have just isolate protein, like water isolate protein?
You're missing carbohydrates that are important for glycogen replenishment, and your next workout might not be so good. Yeah. Generally speaking, let me piggyback off that for a second, then I'll get to the next question. Generally speaking, in the post-exercise state, you want to get in somewhere between 30 to 50 grams of protein, depending on the size and the goal of the individual. and about almost the same, about 30 to 50 grams of carbohydrate. It could be more on the carbohydrate side, but it really is contingent upon the fitness goal of the individual. Are they trying to bulk up, or are they trying to lean out? Next question.
So on the water intake, is it equally beneficial if you take that water in with coffee, milk, or diet sodas, or just water?
What I mean by water intake is that you want to make sure that the actual volume that you're measuring out, like 80 ounces, is just 80 ounces of water. I have never really come up with a solution for people that drink a lot of coffee or drink a lot of tea. Coffee tends to be a diuretic. Tea, to an extent, also is. But what we're trying to do is and there's water in those things. So it should count for something, but we're still trying to get like 80 ounces of pure, unadulterated water. That's the goal.
Herbal teas, what about those? In terms of diuretic status?
I haven't studied those as much. I would say that anything that causes water loss should be replenished with water intake.
Michael, what was the,
Oh, the question was about herbal teas. Except he said it with an accent that sounded like herbal tea, which was quite exciting. It's a whole other thing. I have to look into that herbal tea thing.
It's from the southern hemisphere.
Yeah.
Official herbs.
Herbs, I love it. Australian, right?
New Zealand.
New Zealand, there you go. Back there. And then Chuck.
In order to keep your glycogen levels high, or keep your glycogen levels for doing things like mental work, when do you think is a good time to do the workout? Say that after workouts, you kind of drain that whole thing.
So if I'm hearing this correctly, you're curious to know about how to keep your glycogen levels high for your workout?
No, when would be a good time to work out? Say, for instance, if I know I used to work out during the morning, but also work right afterwards, and I kind of need brain power and glycogen resources. Should I work out later on, or how does that work?
As entrepreneurs here, we probably have a choice when we can work out, and we can break up our day and be like, hey, I'm going to work out in the afternoon, or I'm going to work out in the morning, or whatever the case may be. The most important thing is, when are you feeling like you can do the most amount of work? There's some studies that say working out early in the morning has a superior fat loss benefit. That's only for fasting. So to get the most out of your workout, you just keep in mind, what's the goal? Are you trying to build muscle, or are you trying to burn fat? If you're trying to burn fat, you can afford to be somewhat fasted, work out in the morning, or work out in the afternoon, but don't eat for 3 or 4 hours. Assuming you can handle it. If your goal is to put on the most amount of muscle possible, you'll probably want to load up on carbs before and after the workout. And of course, in addition to that, some protein as well. Did that answer your question a little bit?
Yeah. Sort of.
Can you step in a little closer so I can hear you?
Yeah, sort of, kind of. It was just, like I said, if I'm working, I guess I'll ask it later.
how can he maximize his brain power? I think if he
Oh,
works
maximize
out,
brain power.
Right?
Yeah.
If he's working out, he has to work out, and then he has to work. Like, how is the best way
And you're
to
supposed to be
schedule that?
fasting.
Yeah.
The question is like, you work out in the morning, and then later in the morning, you're working and you have this energy loss.
If you should walk the way that, and I showed you that with the split jump demonstration. If you're walking away from your workout exhausted, physically, you've done it right. If mentally you're not feeling better after 30 to 60 minutes, if your energy's still tanking, there's something wrong. That means that you haven't replenished your energy reserves in a way that's conducive towards mental alertness, or there's a micronutrient need that's not being addressed, such as a vitamin or mineral imbalance. And that's where multivitamins kind of come into play. That's on the supplement list that works. Okay.
So work out anytime in 30 minutes, you should be able to get your brain power back. If
Yeah.
you're not, then there's something missing.
Yes. Sorry, that was a little convoluted. Okay, question.
The Asian way on drinking water is hot and warm, and it seems the Western way is sort of cold. Do you have any comment about that?
Yeah, the Eastern culture may be like the yin yang thing, right? Is that just out of curiosity, acupuncture philosophy, perhaps?
No, it's sort of in general. If you go to
Okay.
Asia, they're always giving you hot water.
Yeah, and honestly, from my understanding, I've never really studied hot water absorption, but when we drink really cold water, the the influx into our intestines, where it's actually absorbed from the stomach to the intestines, is delayed because our body has to warm it up to body core temperature before it crosses epithelial tissue and actually gets into our bloodstream and then delivered to wherever our bodies need the water. So hot water might need to be cooled a little bit if you use the same rational thought process. I tend to drink just slightly cooler than room temperature, and it's fine. But generally, however it works for you. And on the water intake idea, find the method that works best for you. Some people want to drink like 80 ounces in one container, or they want to drink it in 2 or 3 containers. They want to parse it out in divisions, or they just want to drink it in cups, or they want to drink it out of a straw or a sports bottle. Whatever works for you, chances are there's something that you're actually drawn to, and it's the least burdensome to drink your water goal this way. And if that's the case, I highly recommend you find it and stick with it. Any other questions? Yeah.
You've been saying a lot of things like this or that, whether you're trying to lose weight or gain muscle. Like, what if you're trying to do both?
That's the moderate fat loss, moderate muscle growth goal. And that's realistic. People can lose body fat and improve muscle mass at the same time. You can't do both like a rock star. I mean, max fat loss and max muscle growth, they have strengths and weaknesses accordingly. This is the middle ground between the two. And yeah, that based on that, you're gonna need to really focus on a good training program that helps you burn calories in the workout, get that post-exercise burn, and make sure protein intake is strong to get the best of both worlds. Yeah.
Following that question, is there a set amount of time that you can you work out 3-4 times a week, or is there a number that you can work out, whether that's times or minutes wise, if you're doing high intensity, that is it going to be different to maintain versus to actually go after those goals of burning fat and building muscle?
Yes, that's a great question. So there is acquisition of the goal and there's maintenance of it. Maintenance you can dial back just a little bit, but if you're really trying to, if you have a lofty goal like I want to lose 20 pounds for a high school reunion or wedding or whatever the event is, you'll probably need to increase your physical activity, exercise activity quite a bit and really get really good on the nutrition. But I advocate trying to create 3 to 4 hours of high intensity training per week. And you can do that in any way that you want. It can be 4 1-hour sessions or 6 45-minute sessions, so on and so forth. I do suggest though that people start with a 30-minute duration. Push yourself really hard. Try to get exhausted within 30 minutes, and then do that 6 days a week. I know that sounds crazy. 6 days of exercise is a lot of exercising, but there's something very psychologically attractive and minimally mentally burdensome about working out for 30 minutes and being done. It's not, oh, I worked out for 30 minutes, I still got 30 minutes to go. You're just done. You get to leave. But you're leaving because you're freaking exhausted. You're like crawling out the door. You saw how it works. So the idea is that you want to try that, and it has other benefits too. So that will help you help you chip away at that 3-hour quota of high intensity training per week, while also helping boost this concept of momentum. And training momentum is just this. If you exercise day after day after day, you have a habit of exercising. You take 1 day off, it's kind of neutral. You take 2 days off, you're kind of now in the habit of not exercising. Try not to take 2 days off. Even if you're working out 4 days a week, go Monday on, Tuesday off, Wednesday on, Thursday off, Friday on, Saturday on, Sunday off. That way you're parsing out your days off and you're less likely to develop a habit of not doing it. So 30 minutes, 6 days a week has a really high rate of momentum. Again, to answer your question about ramping up, you may need to get into 4 or 5, but I dare say even with 4 hours of exercise, if your nutrition is good, if your stress management is good, if you're sleeping well, there's a lot of synergy there. I, for myself, only exercise 3 hours a week, but it's 6 half-hour sessions, about. Any other questions? Yes?
So let's
say you're not doing any of those things.
Mhm.
I'm asking for a friend, not myself. What? It seems like if you try to focus on all of those things at once, you're just setting yourself up to fail. So do you have like a hierarchy of what you should prioritize?
Yeah. Start with, even though it's just like kind of badmouth physical activity in ways, start with just setting time aside to doing something that's greater than sitting around. So if you're not used to exercising at all, go for a 30 or 60-minute walk. Do that 3 days a week, then build up to 4, then build up to 5, and then start changing the variables where you're consistently dedicating time to that thing, but you're now increasing the intensity. And as the intensity increases, then you can drop the duration a little bit. So that 60-minute walk 4 days a week can turn into a 45-minute jog, can turn into 30 minutes of high-intensity interval sprints. We sprint for, now this is a lazy man's workout, you sprint for 30 seconds and then you rest for 2 or 3 minutes. Come on. I mean, if you do that for 30 minutes, you're mostly not even exercising if you think about it. And on the nutrition side, start with intermittent fasting. If there's anything that I would say that you guys walk away with today, is just try intermittent fasting. Because it really doesn't require you doing anything. You just stop doing a thing and add in breakfast, those calories, later in the day, instead of having them at 8 a.m. or 7 a.m., whatever the case may be. And then just start chipping away at the list. It's even though I advocate sprinting as an exercise, fitness is actually a marathon. It takes time. It takes a lot of energy. Bradshaw and Christy are clients of mine, and they know that. Yeah, thank you. They know they work really hard, but the results don't come overnight. It takes an accumulation. We're trying to convince the body that this is the smart thing to do. But it's very metabolically expensive to build strong, healthy bodies. It's like living in San Marino. Everyone wants it, but maybe not San Marino. Maybe San Monica. I don't know. But anyway, it's like screw San Marino. But the point is, it's metabolically expensive to build a healthy, strong body. Last question.
How accurate do you think the Fitbit measuring device is? And as a follow-up to that, how do you establish the metrics that might show you peak training? Or
the question is how Fitbit can be used as a device to monitor activity and intensity. It's using heart rate, as I understand it right now, as a proxy for intensity. And generally speaking, as the intensity increases, the heart rate increases. But what you want to do, it's not necessarily having a high heart rate and keeping it there the whole time. It's actually spiking it up and bringing it down, and spiking it up and bringing it down. That's the best way to practice what I've been talking about, high intensity interval training. It's not steady state. Because, and here's why. You can be running at like 10 miles an hour for like a minute, and then that's really high intensity, and then eventually you start slowing down. Your heart rate is still elevated, but you're still just grueling yourself to oblivion. You're no longer pushing yourself really hard. Your pace has slowed down, but the heart rate is elevated. That has a time and place that can be effective, but I'm just saying sprints, walk, sprints, walk, sprints, walk. So on the Fitbit, can it graph the actual plot of your heart rate over the course of a whole workout?
Yes.
I would look for those peaks and those valleys, and then peak and then valley. That's a proxy for energy expenditure, but what actually determines how much energy we're burning in the workout and in the post-exercise state is not practical. There is not a wearable tech device out there yet that can measure what's called oxygen consumption. So you may have seen exercise videos or advertisements where there's this like really fit athlete and he's like plugged into a mask and he's sprinting on a treadmill. That's a VO2 max assessment probably, but it's just measuring the oxygen that's being consumed and the CO2 that's being produced during that workout, and that indicates caloric expense and also fuels that are being used. So I can tell you whether you're burning carbohydrates during that workout or whether you're burning fats. And just so you guys know, when you do interval training, high intensity style, you're burning carbs during the workout, but in the post-exercise state, when growth hormone is high, you're burning a lot of body fat. So keep that in mind.
Maybe it's different. I think general metrics to determine, when you're at a peak rate. But obviously for that to really be effective, you have to personalize.
Yeah,
your
and
max heart rate, and
they say 220 minus your age is your maximum heart rate, and not everyone's going to fall within that bell curve distribution of averages. So my recommendation when you're doing if you want to try high intensity interval training, push yourself as hard as you possibly can to the point where you feel like you can't go another second. And then see how high your heart rate gets, and see if it gets higher and higher in successive sprints. After maybe second or third sprint, it may finally reach its peak, and it may be 220 minus your age, or it may be higher or lower. And then you can use that as a standard measure for a while to see, oh, I can push myself a little harder. I haven't hit my highest point just yet. But do keep in mind, sometimes your heart rate climbs a little bit, like a beat or two or a few, after the activity ceases, which is an interesting thing. All right, well, I think that's it for the Q&A section. If you guys if you want me to send you an email of all this information, the tables and the slide deck, let me know at business cards here. You can email me and I'll respond. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.